Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Welcome to a new episode of the FMCG Guys. I'm your host, Daniel Torres. If this is the first time you join us, we're here to speak with the top voices in the fast-moving consumer goods industry and also in retail, from supermarkets to fashion. We've been running for 2+ years now, haven't spoken with very inspiring and, most importantly, fun people, because ultimately, if you're listening to a podcast, it's to get some entertainment. And if you can learn, even better. As a reminder, by the way, and especially if you're interested in the US market, where they call FMCG CPG, which goes for consumer packaged goods, do remember that we're part of a family of podcasts, which is led by the CPG Guys, where in that podcast, which is hosted by Peter, Shri, and Brian, you'll hear top voices around omni-channel commerce in the US. They've been running for 4 years now, actually, since 2020. So yeah, top retailers there, top brands, you'll find them all. So definitely worth a listen. So today I'm accompanied by two other top voices in the consumer goods industry. One of them is my co-host, Efrain Rosario. Hey, Efrain, how are you?
Hey, Daniel. Welcome back to this side of the Atlantic.
Thank you. And we'll refer to that in a minute, because the other legend that's joining us, and actually it's a legend with capital words. He's saying that he's not, but he actually is, because I've known about him for a long time, and it's not for any reason. He's actually joining us from the US. I actually caught up with him at Shop Talk in Vegas last week. He's joining us with his iconic red wine colored blazer, and it's Chris Berry. Hey, Chris, how's it going?
Hey, Daniel and Efrain, I'm really excited to be back, and thankfully I'm joining you as we're talking today with one extra day of sleep after Shop Talk, because among all the things going on and the red-eye flight back home, getting back yesterday morning, I don't know if it would have been the same conversation yesterday, but I'm really excited to be here today to geek out on all things commerce, from e-commerce and beyond. So
it wouldn't have been the same, that's for sure. Probably worse, I suspect. How did you find Shop Talk this year, by the way? Let me ask you this.
So interestingly enough, I've never been to Shop Talk, and I not for any negative reason. I just always had another event or a training or some other thing that we were doing, and I always had this fear of missing out that kept being realized because I couldn't get to go. But this was such an awesome experience to go, and honestly, the content is always amazing. But more importantly, I think it was like what I almost say, that the words Shop Talk as the name really represents. It's all the networking. It's all literally, as I'm walking through the floor, I saw like 6 people from my past life in just one 20-minute walk, and getting then to eat dinner with my previous boss and my previous, team members, and, from different sides of the industry. It was an amazing experience all around. And it just kind of reinvigorated me for for the rest of the year, obviously, for 2024.
And Chris, you're not going to Shop Talk, is when they have these list of actors that are very famous, and they're like list of actors that were never nominated to an Oscar, right? So,
well, no, I will definitely be going back to future Shop Talks and others. I'm thankful that we're able to return back to in-person events in a big way, post-COVID now, multiple years, and with my organization, we're actually being able to join the stage as well and share our nerdity and our passion for all these topics. So it was an awesome experience. It wore me out after many years of working from my home office.
Well, and I was going to say, Chris, you and I actually met through one of those events as well, right?
Exactly.
So we actually met I think it was right in the heart of the pandemic, when you guys were organizing an event with the Digital Shelf Institute. So it's nice to reconnect, albeit not in person. So we'll have to make sure that we try to get you over to the Shop Talk events or other events on this side of the Atlantic sometime soon.
Would love to, and would love to see you again. And like I said, I always jokingly say the nice thing with virtual is that we're omni-channel, so we can come to you any way you want, through podcasts, through webcasts, through through in-person events. Eventually, we'll figure out holograms, and we'll just be able to pop up like in Star Wars. It'll be awesome. So,
because that sounds like a very 2021 thing to say.
well, I go back to my nerd roots on all things Marvel, Star Wars, fantasy, sci-fi. You'll hear lots of movie references in my my presentations.
Well, I'm glad I mentioned the thing of the Oscars. That was timely. So,
yes,
Chris, tell us a bit about, how did you start your career in FMCG, CPG, commerce?
So I was born in, I'm just kidding. I won't go back that far. No, so after business school, before e-commerce and before all the changes that have happened in the last 15 plus years, especially for FMCG, CPG categories, the natural career for a want-to-be marketer was brand management. And so after business school, I got the amazing privilege of going to start my marketing career at Reckitt on the brand side in the US. And I started on the Lysol or Dettol brand. And my mom actually was a Lysol mom. So it was such a cool opportunity to work on. Even if it was a cleaning brand, it was a brand that had been a part of my home and a part of my life.
It's an iconic brand. Yeah,
exactly. No, I mean, no one doesn't know the brand, but obviously some people would say, well, wouldn't it have been cool to work on like Nike or so well, yeah, it would have been cool, but it was a cool brand because it had been part of my life. And so that was my global brand experience. And then I got, as I worked my way up, I actually got to work on some of the local hero brands. And then interestingly, and I want to say Reckitt is not for everyone, but Reckitt is honestly like the Marine Corps, and it's kind of the lean, mean fighting machine. And so I say that not because they do everything perfectly, but they've been very successful at challenging the status quo in innovation, in commercialization. And they just really instilled this sense of like, if you're in the room and you're not figuring out a way to add value or look at what's coming next, then you shouldn't be in the room. And so, and that really caused me to then, when this opportunity called e-tailing popped up, and they had asked for volunteers to join this special project. And I always tell the story. It's funny that they called it a special project, like it was going to end. Like one day we'd figure e-com out and it'd be done, right? And so I volunteered. I wanted to be a part of that. I'd actually been asking about being in a digital media role because obviously social media, digital media, which seems so old school now, was new back then. But e-tailing came up, and that was a way to merge digital and my marketing and then experience. And then I got more sales experience as well, starting to work with all these amazing retailers, both emerging, but like an Amazon at the time, or the Walmarts and whatnot of the world that were omni-channel retailers who were still not quite focusing on that. So I really got this amazing opportunity to use what Reckitt did so well at challenging you to challenge the status quo, to then go help build that organization, that center of excellence at Reckitt, which then allowed me to take that experience on to Wellness Pet Company later in my brand career, and then to Kellogg's ultimately as well, before having the chance to transition over to the agency or consulting side later. So, but that was, I always value my marketing career because that marketing mindset brought into a sales world where then retail media and other topics really require like some marketing chops and some background, really aided me, I think, in being able to merge two different worlds.
That's a really interesting viewpoint, right? Where you talk about like you said, bringing that marketing mindset and those fundamentals into more of a sales or even like I say commercially oriented space when you move to the agency side. And just out of curiosity, what was there anything that you really took away from that agency experience that has helped you now in terms of like building your own firm with First Mover?
So lots of things, interestingly enough, but just some ones that pop up is when you adopt a role when you become an entrepreneur inside FMCG organizations, interestingly enough, people want what you do, but they don't want you. And that's going to sound really silly, but I know a lot of fellow e-com leaders or people who lead change. Everyone wants the change until they realize that they have to change as well. And then you're not really, you make them uncomfortable. You challenge the status quo. And so, and that's true. I feel the same way. My wife always says to me, Chris, you're a change agent in your job, and then at home you're not a change agent. So like no one is a change agent all the time. But the challenge is inside an organization, there's only so much change you can lead before you've pushed the boundary a little bit too far. And that's why you see a lot of leaders over the last 10 years change jobs a lot. It's not just because they're not doing a good job. It's that they run the baton 1 year, 2 years, they pass it to someone else who's new. It's actually, I think, a very healthy process, even though it does cause some complexity. But when you join the agency side, you end up having the chance to help lots of companies at each stage that they need someone new to help them. And you get to bring all those best practices across and not get trapped in well, we do this because this is the way we've always done this. You're like, well, yeah, but your number one competitor is doing something different. And you could, so it helps validate the fact that all those things you felt when you were stuck in one company aren't the only way you can do it. I also, to be honest, it's very humbling to be on the other side and to see how sometimes FMCG companies treat their partners. Because I always tried to be very respectful with every partner I had and treat them like they were part of my company. I'm sure I didn't always succeed, but I tried. I didn't always see my peers do that, and to come back on the other side and almost be able to kind of say, hey, remember I used to do what you do. I'm here, I'm here to help you, but I can't help you if you don't help me in this way. And so it's a humbling experience to be on the other side as the, where they're the customer and when you're not the customer. So I think that's an important change.
And it's a comfort zone, which is difficult to leave, right? The comfort zone of being in the brand, because, coming from Shop Talk, for example, when you go to a conference, the experience as a brand is very different than as a supplier, no? But that's the nature of things, right? But and Chris, tell us so you were at Reckitt, then you went to the agency side, then you go back to Kellogg, you go to Kellogg, back into the brand side. And is it at that point where you started your own thing, which is then you went back to the agency side, apologies. And then you went and joined and started, firstmovr, which is what you're currently doing and what you've been doing for the last 4 years. What was your idea, and what does firstmovr actually do?
Yeah, no. Yeah, so it's funny, in 15 years, I've been all over the place and honestly kept learning. And I did actually do a little stint on the agency side, then went back to Kellogg's, not because I didn't like the agency side, but when Kellogg's asks you, calls you to arms, you answer the call. Like it's an amazing company. But then I went back and I ended up going to the company that became Edge by Essential, which was digital shelf analytics and education and consulting. And then they are now part of Flywheel, which got purchased by Omnicom. So this is like the artist formerly known as, Prince. It goes back, but so so one of my passions is education, and I gained that that was part of my job, was educating at a senior level, or the leaders and the practitioners who did not believe we needed to do e-com at the time, or that we needed to prioritize changes. You had to get really good at executive education and then also evangelizing. And so I really, really loved that galvanizing that I had to practice internally, and it was just a natural thing I loved to do. My mom was a teacher. My wife is a teacher. I almost became a teacher of other topics before I realized I really wanted to go into marketing. So it was a natural passion, but I got the immense privilege of owning our share groups and our hackathons, which were these big summits in-person summits that we led at Edge for 2 years. And they stopped during COVID. And that wasn't really Edge's business. And so Edge's business with the digital shelf analytics and the consulting side. So there ended up being an opportunity for a dedicated focus to education, which needed to change, though, from their model to more of a virtual model during COVID. And so my former colleague and my original boss and manager at Kellogg's, Oscar Koshubsky, was consulting at the time. I had this opportunity to start something, but I never want to do something alone. I think we're always better together. And so we kind of joined forces and created First Mover as really as like a platform, an ecosystem representing all of us, right? All of these leaders of change. It's not about Oscar and me, or we would have called it the Oscar and Chris show. It was about all of us, all of you, like out there. And so, and we're not, we're not really a solution provider. We're not really an agency. We're not really an analyst. We're not obviously a brand or a retailer. We're kind of in this middle space, this upskilling space, and that fits whatever upskilling means. We put on over 100 virtual summits to date. We have podcasts. They're all free for brands, but really high quality, because that's what I would have wanted personally. I don't want to just go be sold at. I want like really valuable content sliced and diced into the topics that matter. We do. So we've worked with over 90 now FMCG organizations globally and locally on their internal certification programs, onboarding programs, executive immersion programs to help democratize this knowledge internally as well. And then we do a lot of advisory and consulting from, help us optimize our strategy all the way to build it or build our capability tech stack or And we're very lucky now, Oscar and I, we're very honored to have had Amanda Wolf, who used to be at Flywheel in one space and has many expertises across marketing in general, but brings a lot of digital shelf and search and media expertise. She's now joining our eVengers group. Again, just representing all of us first movers out there.
Love the name. Gotta love that name.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Well, it has to be
the pop culture references are flowing today.
Yeah, no, it has to be eVenger, because otherwise Marvel might not be as excited about it.
Remember everybody,
eVenger. But it's been an amazing ride, and again, we like to think of ourselves as a satellite center of excellence that orbits other teams or plugs into their centers of excellence. Wow. Because sometimes teams are too small to have one, but if they have one, we can help augment theirs and plug right into their initiatives.
And you're doing this type of work and bringing the e-com community together, both in the US, but also overseas, right? You do some work in Europe as well, I think.
We do a lot of work with companies directly in APAC, LATAM, EMEA, the core EU markets. Our events historically have been a little bit more US based in terms of some of the retailers we focus on, but we have a lot of global topics. Like we do a lot of the Future of series that are available to everyone. And all of our events are both live, but on demand too. And you can just sign up and you get the recordings and can watch them on your own time.
And that's a typical thing that you would say at the end of it, but I think it's definitely worth asking now. What's the best way for people that are listening to us to like learn more about the events and so on? And we can leave a link in the digital liner notes, of course.
Oh, you bet. No. If you go to firstmovr.com, and First Mover has no E because there's no E in e-commerce, firstmovr.com/events. All of our upcoming events, we've got like 30 more already scheduled throughout the year, are available on our site. They're all free. They will always be free. There's no catch. We have great events available to you to sign up. And you can also follow us on LinkedIn. We post obviously the upcoming events that will help you stay up on those.
Yeah. And what I think was great about our discussion today is that it's going to give people kind of a bit of a sneak peek, if you will, in regards to like what some of that great content that sits on the First Mover site is all about. So I'm chomping at the bit because I think I mentioned either before we started recording or at the very beginning, you and I met quite a while back during the pandemic when I was able to attend one of those sessions that you ran through the Digital Shelf Institute back then. And I'm curious, because you talk to so many of these other FMCG companies all around the world. What do you see as that primary challenge, or actually better yet, the opportunity around e-com for most of the brands that you're talking to?
So we could have like a 20-day podcast if we really want to go into every challenge, but that's a really good question. The best word that I can use to describe the challenge today, but it has like two facets to it, is incrementality. Right now, I know everybody wants incremental growth. I don't know how many times at national sales meetings I was told to grow. Like if you just say the word, it happens. Like it's magic, right? But like it's incrementality. The reason for that is that there was a lot of natural organic growth just from starting to, like, for any company, just focusing on e-commerce up until COVID. Then you had COVID accelerated e-commerce. Then there was a little bit of a rebalancing, obviously, as people went back to store again. But again, e-com is the path of least resistance for shoppers and does add immense value and convenience and will continue to grow. But where the challenge, though, is with all that investment in the capabilities and the resources and the teams and the data and the media, right? All these different areas. Now, not only on top of bigger years driven by COVID, you've got to anniversary that. So everyone's like, we spent all this money on this, the how we win, and we're not winning anymore. Why? Or we're not winning as fast as we were supposed to. How are we going to grow, right? So there's just this overall issue of like, grow as fast as we expected you to from the money we're giving you. And there are a couple companies out there, we'll leave them nameless to protect them, but like who are like actually considering divesting of e-commerce a bit, thinking that maybe they don't need to because it's not as profitable or whatnot because they've spent so much money. So there's this big issue around that. But then there's also just this like, okay, I've got all the 4 Ps of marketing and sales for e-com in place. How do I get more from that? And so everybody's looking for that next level hack on a tactic. They're looking for that next level hack on the strategy and other areas. And so incrementality is really, and it's also from how do I measure this incrementality as well? So it's not just a doing it, it's a measuring it. So that's the word of the day, I would say.
So if we had to start breaking that down, because you mentioned a lot of the different elements that go into that word incrementality, and I completely agree with you. I think it is oftentimes overused and wrongly used to kind of be an all-encompassing kind of thing. But I'm curious to get your perspective around incrementality through the lens of media or demand generation, and really thinking about going from top of funnel versus bottom of the funnel type of activities and really looking at it in a more full funnel sort of way. And it's going to bring up one of our favorite topics on the pod as of late, which is retail media. So I'm curious just to understand, how do you see that? Particularly, for those of us here in Europe where retail media isn't as developed as it is over in the US, but it's starting to catch up fairly quickly. Sorry, you say something.
Let's take one step back beforehand. What does incrementality even mean?
That's a good question. And I don't have the Wikipedia definition in front of me, but I'm going to make up a Chrisipedia.
I much better prefer the Chrisipedia than the Wikipedia. Like, are you kidding me?
I would say incrementality in general, most people are thinking about it is how do I get more from what I'm already doing or investing or activating now, right? So how do I get more from my current strategies, my partnership, my process, my data, et cetera, right? So that's like getting more from the current. The reality, though, is some companies have to pull back. So then it's about incrementality could also be how do I get the same or more from less? Or I always like to pivot the other side. In the absence of doing anything, you're going to lose, right? So if you don't do e-commerce or retail media or any of these key areas effectively or at all, you will lose to those who do. And so actually incrementality is how not to lose as much or any, right? So incrementality isn't just how much more I gain, it's how much I don't lose to the much larger competitive set and the more evolving, real-time dynamics that I'm facing. So but it is about how do I get ideally exponentially more from the same things I'm doing by being smarter about how I do them.
Mm-hmm. Right. So usually the way my experience has been that it tends to refer to you're not cannibalizing something else that you're already doing. So in the case of like retail sales, for example, I'm not just shifting sales from an in-store transaction to an online transaction. And in some places that actually might make sense to do, but we won't cover that. But it's usually almost like another way to think about it is like the inverse or the opposite of cannibalization as well.
Exactly.
The key word here is more.
Right, exactly. Now, to your point, if shifting is going to happen, I want to make sure I don't lose the people that are shifting. But if I can win in the space they're shifting to, this could have been from one channel in store to another channel, right? From hypermarkets to the hard discounters like an Aldi or a Lidl, right? I might be losing in a shift like that because they're shifting from regional, global, national brands all the way over to private brands, right? Being store brands owned by those types of retailers. So I would have been losing in the shift. So the idea is, to your point, it's about more and less cannibalization. But some of that is, how do I make sure I don't lose what's happening because I can't help with the shift? And how do I make sure I'm gaining incremental in the shift because I'm winning where they're shifting to?
Yeah. So I think, just pragmatically speaking, if I'm looking at it through if I put my brand marketer hat on, sometimes it does come down to money and budget as well, right? So I've got a finite amount of budget that I can spend, and I need to choose where do I choose to go and allocate that. And it kind of comes back to what I was asking a second ago, which is around media, right? So I have a media budget, and I can choose to spend that in traditional media, or I could choose to spend that in emerging forms of media like retail media. So I'm curious to get your perspective in terms of the role of retail media in terms of being able to deliver that incrementality.
Well, and I love that you started, the budget part is finite, right? You don't have, you can't get more money until you've proven that you could get more return, and maybe you can get executive leadership to give you more money. But part of the issue is that budgets are sitting in all these different silos who have different people who own them. And I'm not being mean to them, because I've been one of these people too, but who also have an ego, who also want to protect their roles and the importance of their decision-making power. And that's not a criticism, that's just reality. Human nature does affect the decisions that we make, even if they're not always the perfect holistic decision. But in the past, you had consumer marketing and media, and you had shopper marketing and trade marketing down at the bottom, because that's really how the consumer and the shopper lived, right? They were two very different people because of the fact that I was at home or I was out of home engaging in content, and then I went to a store, or I went to I had a very separate mission where I was purchasing. But now, obviously, because e-commerce connects, social commerce connects us within milliseconds, we are the consumer and the shopper within milliseconds. So we have to on the back end, we have to look at and we can't divide the budget before we know what we're trying to achieve. And that it sounds so basic, but what am I trying to achieve? Who does that mean that I need to target? How would I measure the success of that objective against that audience? And then who can help me deliver on that from a media activation perspective? And the reason, what I love about the EU, and I'd say that any market, even if you're a few steps behind other markets with retail media or with e-commerce development, why not take the best practices already happening here and use that playbook to win years ahead of where it's already mature in your market? You're going to be the first mover literally today, and you're going to be a hero. But that's just a little side comment that I think is important. Just use this now while you can and build this into your plans. But retail media often feels like this point of purchase investment only, but more and more of our retailers, especially in our markets, Tesco, Carrefour, everybody is going up the funnel with new capabilities on site with display, but also off site with social, Tesco and Pinterest and all. Television streaming partnerships. There's going to be a lot more upper funnel capabilities that can use the retailer's targeting that is actually way more qualified audience. So if my objective is awareness, but I do hope that awareness eventually becomes sales, why wouldn't I want to drive awareness with an audience I know has bought the category before or has lapsed from our brand in the past and needs to be brought back? And the retailer can actually help you do that, and then also measure it as well. So it's not perfect today. Don't get me wrong. There's still some maturity that needs to happen. But a lot of times I see one interesting example from a US side test that was done at one very large FMCG company, but the media team didn't want to invest in the retailer's upper funnel because it costs more. And they said there's no way the ROI is good because of the cost was twice as much as if they bought like the Google and Facebook advertising themselves. But they ran an A/B test, and they actually got literally like a 33% higher ROI overall, for not ROAS, not the retail media metric alone, the actual overall ROI, apples to apples, from the retail media, because they were actually hitting a more qualified audience that did engage.
So I think it's interesting because it's basically, before it was more like marketing influencing sales, right? Like in terms of like how you approach the customer and so on. And now it's really like having that top-to-top negotiation to buy like that, and then have that media spend on the retailer to really like as part of your marketing strategy,
Right. It's not about how. At the end of the day, the retailers, yes, are a part of it, and we have to negotiate with them. And you think about JBPs and all that. That's a whole nother lens to add in, but the point is, at the end of the day, I have a product, I have a brand, I have an objective in my channels, in my markets. What am I trying to achieve? Who does that mean I need to achieve it with? What would the KPIs be that would determine success? And then who, anywhere, could deliver on that? And that's also good with a retailer, because if a retailer can't actually deliver on your plan, then that's part of the very objective, not subjective, but objective conversation. I want to invest with you, XYZ retailer, but you can't deliver on my objectives.
Yeah.
Well, when you can, and this is what it would take, I'm ready to invest. That becomes a very productive negotiation, as opposed to just, oh, you don't want to lean in with us. Well, that's not true. I want to, but you can't deliver my objectives. So until then, but give them a path to how they could do it so they can step up. You can actually make better decisions for your entire full funnel activation.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of like measurement, how can like brands quantify the impact of e-commerce on their total business? No, because if you're asking to make these investments, and obviously being online or being present in e-commerce, not only about like, how much are you selling on e-commerce? Like, what's the value of this channel? But there's more to it. But how can you actually measure that? Like, how can you make a proof like that being online, even if you're not selling there, and you assume that you're wasting money because you're spending a lot of money in trade and so on internally? How can you, what metrics can you use to justify that investment for the greater good of the business?
I do recognize measurement is one of the biggest challenges today, because it's not, like we kind of all had a better vision, like full market view of in-store sales in the past, because we had a lot more time for that to get developed and for retailers to share their data. We're still in an adolescence stage for retail online data. But the point being is, I always like to go back to it goes back to that consumer journey. Where do they start their online? Where do they start their product search journeys, right? Or their inspiration journey? Mm-hmm. I saw some really great data from VML that did like a 20,000 person research study that just validated that across European markets, most people are starting on a marketplace across all categories, i.e. an Amazon or a bowl.com or whatever marketplace is local to them. If not, then also Google, but it depends on what category. But it was mostly retailer sites and marketplaces that were winning. So again, even if I don't buy online, I'm starting online. And so if I start online to later buy in store, what would I be buying in store? What I researched online. If I can't find you and you don't impress me, I won't convert to you. But being visible online means you're winning the digital shelf. So I always like to say, like, for kind of this imperative message is, I need to win online to win where the growth is happening. I need to win online so that I win where the influence is happening. And then long-term, it's not just shopper influence. Our merchants, the retailers, they're choosing products. This is happening at Boots and Tesco and Walmart and Target and all these major global omni-channel retailers. They are bringing in-store the brands that are winning online. And sometimes that's not the big brands that used to win. And so long-term, winning online will influence the shopper, but winning online also will inform whether you're even allowed to be in store at all with the retailer itself. So it's hard to measure, but my point is I think if you go back to like, where do I need to win with the consumer shopper? E-commerce is like a no-brainer. It becomes the first step, right? To win in store, I need to win online first.
But it's interesting to me that you said, like, we're in that adolescent phase when it comes to measurement for the online channel. It's not for lack of data, right? Because we know we've got more data points about online behavior than we do about what happens in store, what happens, even let's say outside the actual store itself. But what's interesting to me is that sometimes you have to be able to take that online engagement, that interaction, and be able to convey the value of it to somebody who doesn't work in e-com, right? So,
right.
How do you see, like, for example, like some of like the more, let's say, traditional metrics that those of us who grew up in store have, kind of gotten very comfortable with, like things like, size of basket or frequency of purchase and, recruitment in terms of new buyers? Are those things that you see as like, either things that are readily available or that things that brands should be thinking about in terms of how they're building that measurement capability?
So I love that. And honestly, you're describing category management, right? So the best way to bring everyone along for the ride in e-commerce, even if it's not their job, is to remind them that all of the things that they know how to do actually apply here. And we just might not have been mature yet, as like e-com at first just has to get content and assortment and distribution and some activation, right? It's some of the P's, right, of sales and marketing. But then it's how do we do those incrementally better or smarter than we used to? And that's where category management 2.0 comes in, to your point. How do I design my content, my media, and my assortment around a bigger basket objective to get more euros or pounds per basket? Or how to, and whether or not I have all the data perfectly available at every key retailer doesn't mean I can't design for that outcome. If 90% of my budget is spent on targeting new non-brand shoppers, then undoubtedly, even if the retailer didn't provide me perfect insight down to you would know though that the target audience was not new, right? I mean, the target audience was new, and that you were adding incrementality, right? So I always like to say it's like plan for the outcome you want even before you have all the perfect data that you want, because you will see growth and you'll be able to attribute that to the incrementality category management pillars that you're going after. But there are, honestly, we have a whole list, and I'm happy to share with anybody out there like who wants to reach out, like no cost involved. We have a whole list of like metrics that actually are available that can inform whether you're driving very specific, new shoppers, lapsed shoppers, bigger baskets, more trips. And there are a lot of there are about 12 different strategies you can design all of your hows around. So I always like to say, design your hows around your whys, and you can drive, much greater incrementality long term. So
a brand, how should they think of like this total category management, like, in-store, online?
Well, it's a great point. Obviously, right now, there's still kind of an online and an in-store world for a lot of teams who work on two, but in the same way, media is becoming full funnel. It's not consumer versus shopper, right? It's not consumer versus retail. It's connecting. You've got category management should not be operating separately, right? E-com teams should be bringing their Catman teams into the discussion. Catman teams should be asking e-com to teach them how it works, because once the two merge, we can go back to the next level of maturity and planning. But I think brands, there are some extra things that can happen online by all means, right? Site taxonomy, how the retailer organizes the categories online is a little different than in-store planogram management. So there are some nuances and practices that are a little different, but the core principles of category management are literally the same online and in-store. And actually, you can do a little bit more category management strategy online quicker, because activating a promotion or a media program can happen in a much shorter timeline than planning it in an in-store environment. So you could test it online first, see its engagement, and then pitch for a bigger program that included omni-channel activation in store too.
And do you feel like most of FMCG companies, their category management or trade marketing teams are connected, are aware of online? Because that's not my feeling. My feeling is that there's a big disconnect there.
So Oscar and I were just in front of 200 people in category management, and the first question we asked them is, honest question, on a scale of 0 to 10, where would you assess your own knowledge of e-commerce? The average was 3. So on the low side, right? Which was, I appreciate the honesty. That isn't, we don't judge them. That's not bad. It's natural, right? You haven't been asked to manage e-commerce to date or help e-commerce, but you actually, we told this audience, you are the next e-venger, right? We need you to, you have superpowers. We need you to apply here, but you have to be curious and ask to get involved. And then I would say on the e-com side, those teams need to ask Catman to get involved. They're not going to make your life harder. They're going to get you the incrementality that your leadership is asking you to go deliver. So both sides need to, I don't want to say step up, but step closer together and merge as a team.
Yeah. So if you're an e-commerce director listening to this, pick up your phone and call your category manager or your trade marketing director.
And I know we're mixing worlds here, but I was like, it's almost like the bat signal. And I know that's obviously PC versus Marvel, but you get the drift, right? Which is like like you said, you're being recruited to be an e-venger when it comes to this. So the call has been put out.
Yes. So answer the call. We know you can answer that call. They need you.
Absolutely. So I had one just other quick question, and then I'll hand it back over to Daniel, which is that around media and the topic of media. We mentioned at the beginning around how it can be difficult to be able to demonstrate the value that an online transaction can bring, not just in terms of actually like a purchase transaction, but the kind of brand building impact that it can deliver as well. And I was just curious to get your perspective around, you know, how that might work. Or are there any metrics on that list that you referenced that talk about the brand building element as well, in terms of like, almost like that it's not just, you can't think of e-commerce solely as a sales channel. It can also be a brand building channel as well.
Oh, 1000%. And I always like to say, when people say, can you really build a brand through e-commerce? Well, there are thousands of challenger brands who used e-commerce to beat your brands online. And I don't mean that, again, to be negative. I mean, there's no barrier to entry, right? You and I, all of us could sell something on Amazon if we had a product and build a brand slowly or quickly, depending on how much money we have and how quick we are to activate and test and learn. But the marketplaces like Amazon, Alibaba, Shopee, Lazada, Mercado Libre, you name it, across the markets are enabling challenger brands to test and learn at a speed that most big brands can't. And they're building brands and rising. And so the reason they're rising is once you win that digital shelf, which again feels retail oriented, you now have your digital shelf visibility is a metric that isn't just for sales online, even though it helps for sure, but it's also about driving awareness and consideration. And if you're not in the top row, you don't exist for most shoppers, right? So I think to your point, Ephraim, some of your search rank on your retailer sites and it equates to your awareness, your relevance to you can obviously measure brand equity, but you can't even be relevant if you're not visible. There's also the fact that every time someone buys something online, they go into their past purchase history. And a lot of shoppers, especially in grocery and the food and beverage space, start with their past purchase history to build their orders. But I do that on Amazon myself. I often don't go back and search again. I go back to what I already know I want. So there's a long-term loyalty that comes from just converting someone for the first time in an online purchase. And again, all of this, if you're doing this with your retail, for brand marketers, if you're doing this with retailers, they will then give you more down the road. There's a return on relationship that keeps you on shelf with them long-term so that you can keep nurturing and building your brand. So that's the part where, like, when we lived in a consumer versus retail world, we didn't think of the halo effect on both sides. We only thought consumer marketing halos in store, but retail halos back. And in the long term, you won't exist if you haven't made sure you manage that retail side.
Yeah, well, that's again, sales to marketing, right? I think it's one to remember. Chris, so we were talking before about all the things that you've done in your career, from brand to agency to brand to agency to starting your own confluence, even I would call it, between all the things you've done. Looking back into your career, what's the one piece of advice you would give yourself, your younger self, as you were starting up?
Well, I would say, I'm going to cheat with two, but I would just say, find your tribe. If you're owning a new area of change, do not feel alone. Like, you're not alone, but in your company, you might be alone, right? And I'm not, again, nobody doesn't like you. It's just you're trying to drive something different, and it causes discomfort. But again, go to Shop Talk. You don't have to know anybody, but everyone there literally is doing the same thing you're doing. And you're suddenly going to go, oh my gosh, I'm not alone anymore. And that really is a motivator, obviously. If you're a driver of change, you need to find the other drivers of change, or just reach out to someone that you see on LinkedIn and say, would you mind talking? I would just love, get some retail therapy. It's okay. You don't have to say you're going to see a counselor. You're just talking to a fellow friend who's feeling the same things and might be able to validate that. So that's kind of on a personal side. On the other side, though, I would say, I do see some of my fellow e-commerce leaders like almost letting status quo take them back over again. And I'm not criticizing them. It's like, this is the box I'm in. I've only been able to push so far. And I'm kind of, over time, I'm wearing down. And it's not a matter of like you just quitting your job and going somewhere else. But my point is, don't let what happens to everyone else actually happen to you, because you had the gift of challenging that status quo and taking on a challenge and being brave. Don't let, when the world doesn't need the Avengers or the bat signal anymore, still practice being a superhero, because at some point they're going to need you, and you don't want to come out of retirement. You want to be ready the moment that bat signal goes live. So that sounds easy, but there have been times where I kind of like let the box take me, because it was just easier than fighting it all the time. Don't give up the fight. And it's not fighting someone else. It's just fighting the system that does cause some loss of inertia and some, again, just, I don't want to say mediocrity, but it can cause that sometimes, just because companies are bureaucratic. They measure what they measure. And so, but they value you for the thing that you do. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way, but they value you for what you do. So don't stay fit, in this space. Always work out so that you're ready to go when they ask.
Great. Well, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Chris. It was interesting to learn from you and learning about category management 2.0, which we talked about. So I'm glad that you were able to join. Ephraim, I know that you have a doctor's appointment coming up now. Can you, before we hang up, can you tell us a few of your key takeaways from this?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've been taking copious notes because a lot of what I'm vibing on what you're saying, Chris, in terms of a lot of things that I'm personally encountering in my day-to-day in working in my respective company. But for me, a couple of things that really stuck out is that, one is that it made me smile when you said that, you started when e-com was a quote unquote special project where there was like a finite end to it. And, here we are now, fast forward 10, 15 years, and we're only just begun in terms of figuring that out. So I thought that was really fascinating to kind of look back. But, it's really interesting to hear you talk about, your passion in education and the fact that you're surrounded by other teachers in your life, and how that's actually kind of drawn you to the space that you created. And the brand marketer in me loves that you've kind of said there's a white space out here, or there's, or blue ocean, whichever, terminology you want to use. And you said, we don't really fit into this box and we don't fit into this box, but we kind of do this, right? And we are that satellite that orbits around your planet when it comes to being able to provide those things. So I think, to me, that was a really interesting way to explain what First Mover does. And Daniel, I don't know what your perspective was on that, or any other things that you took away.
Well, I think it's a testament of how much value it adds to be curious and to work in different industries, even within around the same consumer goods industry, right? And I think that you had the courage to make these changes and to start something on your own, which is never easy, and to bring together the different pieces that you've done. So I think it's very interesting. I think that we've only touched the tip of the iceberg of everything that Chris, because we've had a lot of chats, a few chats over the last months. So I think it's worth noting that it's definitely worth following, and that's why I asked, also, where can people follow you more actively to go more into depth?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and obviously this isn't a pitch or anything, but we are always here to help unofficially or officially. And that's why we have all these free events, because we don't have to sell you anything. But we can help your organization. We can help you on the back end. I always like to say we have there's a show in the US called Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe. He goes and interviews all the people that do the jobs nobody wants to do. Typically, education and then some of the advisory work we do are the projects no one wants to work on. We usually do those, oddly, and really like them, but we're here to help, again, just unofficially. We can be a shoulder to cry on. We can be your cheerleaders in this space, because we've been in your shoes.
Well, and I think you said it really well, which is when we asked you about that one piece of advice and you said, find your tribe. And I think what you guys do, which is really valuable, is that you help people do that. You help them find those other folks that are encountering many of the same challenges. And, like you said, sometimes it just helps to talk it out with somebody else who's kind of in a similar position. So definitely encourage folks to check you out. And we'll, as Daniel said, we'll put the info for how to reach you guys in the liner notes of the episode.
Yeah, exactly. So, Chris, thanks so much for joining. Thanks to all our audience for tuning in another week. And we'll see you in the next episode of the FMCG Guys.